that can look at this kind of, internally what's happening. But now he actually fired them on Friday.
No, you're watching in real time as Donald Trump's gotten a lot smarter about how to make the government work for him. When he was first in office, a lot of this, there was a learning curve. He didn't know the roadblocks he was going to run into. And he comes into office with a team that's very aware of them, and they're going to push the limits and challenge the limits of what they can legally do. But the reality is, where is the check? Where's the balance? Republicans have the House and the Senate and the White House. And I just want to point out one thing Caitlin said that is fascinating, just can't underscore enough. In both the January 6th and documents cases that the Department of Justice was looking into, people they interviewed for that are now in senior roles in the White House, in some cases in the Department of Justice and elsewhere. So it's this very interesting kind of overlapping of people you were once interviewing potentially as a witness or even somebody you were investigating is now in a serious position of power.
Jennifer, what do you make of the Inspector General thing?
So this is a huge disaster. I mean, inspectors general are the principal internal watchdog of the executive branch of government. So before you go lawsuits and go outside to the judiciary, before you want Congress to investigate, these are the people who are in the agencies looking for fraud, waste, abuse, corruption, right? And he has taken them out. Why? Because he doesn't want scrutiny on what he and the agency heads that he's putting into place are going to be doing over the next 4 years. And that is a disaster. Billions and billions of dollars, taxpayer dollars, every single year are distributed by these agencies. I mean, all sorts of corruption they've overturned, sometimes ways that he likes. I mean, he used Michael Horowitz's, the DOJ IG reports in a lot of instances when he felt that it benefited him. So they go both ways. They're apolitical. They're independent. He doesn't want those people. He swept them out. We need to look at the people he's going to bring in. And the real question for the Senate, they may not push back on these firings, which they should because they were illegal. They really need to look at these nominees. And I think this is where they need to draw their line. These people should be independent. They should be apolitical. They should have experience in the IG community. And that's what I'm going to be watching for.
I mean, you just sort of rushed past, and it was illegal. You can't fire inspector generals the way Trump did. The law is quite clear.
You're supposed to notify Congress
and go through a procedure.
Explain why
explain why there's certain time limits, but all these things may wind up in court. But I think it's quite clear that the approach here of the administration is to just simply flood the zone, do as many of these kind of things as possible, and just hope that, they can.
In so many ways, we did not know what the consequences of January 6th would be. At the same time, we knew that individuals affiliated with the effort that Donald Trump effectively condoned by and large have become very much front and central characters in his next administration, or tangentially through his administration. He's here in Florida about to address the House GOP conference, their annual meeting. Speaker Mike Johnson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, almost the entirety of the Republican House caucus is here. And this announcement this afternoon comes at a time in which Republicans are looking to Donald Trump and essentially all but deferential to him, not only in their confirmation of Pete Hegseth, but also Speaker Johnson just a few moments ago was asked a series of questions about his controversial decisions, those of Donald Trump's, and really said that there is no space between him, the conference, and the White House. And when you look at somebody like Ed Martin and the inquiry into these DOJ prosecutors, individuals who were career individuals, and not liberals, but also conservatives, individuals who were career employees that still, by and large, are working inside of the administration. Today, the Department of Justice, they are not the top names of Merrick Garland that folks back home are familiar with, but they are prosecutors who have long worked at the DOJ, and even those who have been there for the last couple of years that took on the work of prosecuting those who were behind the January 6th attack. And now a key ally of Donald Trump's politically is here at the forefront with this opening inquiry.
Harry Littman, Ted Cruz called the January 6th insurrection, quote, domestic terrorism. So I guess you'd forgive career staff at the department if they thought they were doing a righteous thing by prosecuting men and women who physically beat cops, 6 of whom would go on to die, 1 from injuries, 5 from suicide. What happens to folks who are now targeted for firing or worse as part of Trump's retribution tour?
They personally, Nicole, will have a whole panoply of potential remedies, but this is odious and unprecedented. As you say, the career folks who were assigned these cases. Yes, I think they saw them as righteous. They were righteous. That's the thing that Trump is trying to efface. But even if they weren't, they were doing their job as they've always done, without fear or favor. And it's an absolute stake in the heart to try to say, for that reason, you need to be investigated. This is arch politicization and a complete distorted portrayal of what happened before. Nothing like this has ever happened before. Everybody in the DOJ regards the career officials as the lifeblood of the place, and that the attempt here is to suck it dry. It is really, really odious.
I mean, Tim Miller, there would be one thing to say today if the department leapt to hold Donald Trump accountable for a crime he committed on live TV, telling people to, quote, fight like hell or you won't have a country. It's another thing entirely when it appeared from the outside that Merrick Garland was very, very, very reluctant, and seemingly only in the wake of the congressional investigation even turned and appointed someone to investigate Trump's role in this. And I wonder if you can just give some voice to how upside down this is, that career prosecutors at a department that from the outside appeared very reluctant to aggressively pursue the masterminds of the January 6th insurrection, and ultimately only the most violent perpetrators were spending any time in jail. The seditious conspiracy convictions were also wiped out by Donald Trump. But the idea that there was anything aggressive or anything that wasn't beyond by the book is farcical. And I just, before the history is rewritten and we all have our nose pressed against the glass of Trump's retribution tour, a quick note on how conservative, small c conservative, Merrick Garland really was.
Absolutely. No, for sure. And there is this Earth 1, Earth 2 element to this debate in particular, all of our politics now, but it's just so striking here, in a lot of the pro-democracy circles, advocacy circles that were trying to, hold Trump and others accountable for the attempt to overthrow the 2020 election. There was frustration by how small c conservative Merrick Garland was in kind of addressing these crimes and whether there were some delays and whether they should have moved more quickly. And in Trump world, in MAGA world, Merrick Garland is like some boogeyman that was just targeting people baselessly for their politics and was going after them, and it was unprecedented weaponization of the government. It is just two completely opposite views. Obviously, from my perspective, the MAGA world is completely upside down in this. But the other thing that is upside down in this, you read that statement at the top, and I just wanted to reread one sentence of it just to show you just how strange, really how different it is where the MAGA folks are taking us on this. In light of their actions, so these career employees who we're talking about, and this is a statement from the Trump official, in light of their actions, the acting attorney general does not trust these officials to assist in faithfully implementing the president's agenda. That is such an unusual thing to say about the Department of Justice, right? I mean, you were in the White House. Like, the idea that career officials whose job it is to prosecute criminals, also needed to be concerned about implementing the president's agenda, that is just not how things have been done historically. And so the fact that they would put that in a statement, coming from a spokesperson at the department, shows that they're unapologetic about just completely wiping away this notion that there is independence in the judiciary, and that the people that work there have obligations beyond service to Donald Trump.
Mike, Trump telegraphed the retribution part of his candidacy, but now that it's taking form, it is specific, it is unsparing, and you and your colleagues write today that it does include threats of violence.
Yeah, I mean, about what they did today, the retribution campaign is much more organized and has a standing start to it than certainly it had in his first term. In his first term, they did go back, and Barr looked at the Flynn investigation. There was a whole look at the Flynn investigation, the criminal case they really, really didn't like. And it ultimately ended up with the Justice Department having that conviction thrown out. But that was one case. And it took until the third and fourth year of the presidency for that to kick in. We're here on day 8, 7, 8, 9, wherever we are, and there is systemic things that we have seen come out. On the first day, he signs this executive order that puts in place a process, a fact-finding process, to look for political bias. So the important thing to see here is that there's a structure and an architecture to this that's different. He has a U.S. attorney, an interim U.S. attorney, whoever this top prosecutor is in Washington, who is moving ahead with something that has more order to it than sort of the slapdash version of the first term where, he tweets in the second, third, or fourth month about how Obama tapped my wires and that sets off a thing with House Republicans that leads to a memo that...
And more, notifying them by email from the White House Presidential Personnel Office. The Washington Post first reported its whispered message. One of the terminated Inspector General told the Post whoever Trump puts in a row will be viewed as loyalist, and that undermines the entire system. Sanchu Grassley Arlowa, the chairman of Senate Judiciary Committee, said that Trump's action may violate federal law, requires the president to give 13 days notice to Congress of his intent to fire any independent watchdogs, the Associated Press reported. There may be good reasons